The train was unusually crowded that evening. Sarah struggled to make her way down the aisle. People were standing shoulder to shoulder. The air smelled of damp coats and city dust. She just wanted a seat. After a few tense minutes, she found one near the window. She sat down with a sigh. Her small handbag rested tightly on her lap. The familiar hum of the train surrounded her. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes for a second. Her day had been exhausting. Deadlines missed. A conversation with her boss that didn't go well. She felt like the world had been pressing down on her all day. Now she just needed silence. But as she exhaled deeply, a shadow fell over her. She opened her eyes. A man was standing in the aisle, looking at her seat. He seemed hesitant. "Is this seat taken?" he asked quietly. Sarah shook her head. He nodded and sat down carefully. The bench felt suddenly smaller with his presence. She looked at him out of the corner of her eye. He was tall, wearing a coat that looked worn out. There were faint lines on his face, though he didn't look very old. Something about him felt distant, like he carried a weight she couldn't see. The train jerked forward. Sarah turned toward the window. The city lights blurred as they passed. She could feel him glance at her now and then, but he didn't say a word. Minutes passed in silence. The rhythm of the train filled the space between them. Sarah wanted to say something, anything, but she didn't know where to start. Then he spoke first. "You seem tired," he said softly. She turned to him, slightly startled. "Yeah. Long day at work," she replied politely. He nodded as if he understood. "I know what that feels like." There was a faint sadness in his voice. Sarah could hear it clearly. Something about it made her curious. She studied his face for a moment, but he was looking down at his hands. They were trembling slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. He hesitated before looking up. For the first time, Sarah saw his eyes clearly. There was pain there. Deep pain. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine. Just a little nervous." "Nervous about what?" Sarah asked carefully. He drew in a slow breath, his fingers tightening. "I'm going to meet someone I haven't seen in 15 years. Sarah blinked. "Wow. That's a long time. Who is it?" He hesitated for a long second. "My daughter." Sarah felt her chest tighten. He looked down again, voice dropping lower. "She doesn't know I'm coming. I don't even know if she'll want to see me." Sarah didn't know what to say. She could feel the weight in his words. "Why so long?" she finally asked. His jaw tensed. "I made mistakes. Big ones. And I left. I thought staying away would be better for her." She swallowed hard. The regret in his voice was sharp. "But I can't stay away any longer." He continued. "I have to try. Even if she slams the door in my face." Sarah could feel a lump in her throat. This wasn't just casual conversation anymore. This was someone's life unraveling in front of her. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small, worn photograph, held it carefully as if it might break. It was a picture of a little girl. Curly hair, bright smile. "My Emily," he whispered. Sarah looked at the picture for a long moment. "She's beautiful," she said softly. "Yeah," he murmured. "She was 6 when I left." The train rattled loudly over the tracks. The sound filled the silence between them. Sarah wanted to comfort him but didn't know how. "Maybe she's been waiting for this moment," she said quietly. "Maybe she's wanted to see you just as much." He shook his head slightly. "I hope you're right," he whispered. "But I'm not sure I deserve that hope." The train slowed down. Sarah felt her stomach drop. He began gathering his things. His stop was next. She didn't want this conversation to end. There was still so much she wanted to ask. But he was already on his feet. She looked up quickly. "What's your name?" He paused, turned to her with a faint, tired smile. "Daniel. Daniel," she repeated quietly. He nodded. Thank you for listening. I needed someone to talk to. The doors opened. Daniel stepped off the train. And just like that, he was gone. Sarah sat frozen in her seat. She felt strangely connected to him. Like she had witnessed a turning point in someone's life. She turned to the window and watched as the crowd swallowed him up. And she hoped, with all her heart, that his daughter would open the door. But a single question wouldn't leave her mind. Would Daniel's past destroy his chance at reconnecting? Or would this one moment change everything for him and Emily? If you were in Emily's place, would you forgive someone who walked away for 15 years? Or would you close the door on them forever? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And stay tuned, because what happens next will break your heart and inspire you at the same time. The night was colder than Daniel expected. He pulled his worn coat tighter around himself as he stepped out of the station. The streets were unfamiliar. Every face in the crowd was a stranger. But his mind was fixed on just one person. Emily. He whispered her name under his breath. The name felt foreign and familiar at the same time. It had been so long since he had said it out loud. 15 years was enough to erase entire lifetimes. But he hoped, desperately, that some part of her still remembered him. Daniel walked slowly. He had the address written on a small piece of paper in his pocket. He had memorized it 100 times. But his hands still trembled as he touched the folded paper again. He wasn't sure if he had the strength to knock on her door. The city lights flickered in the distance. His shoes scraped the cracked pavement as he moved through the unfamiliar neighborhood. Memories came in waves. Memories of the last time he had seen Emily. She had been standing at the door of the tiny apartment they once called home. Her little hands gripping the edge of the doorway. "Don't go, Daddy." Those words haunted him. He had left anyway, thinking he was protecting her from the chaos of his life. But deep down he knew. He had been running from his failures. Daniel stopped under a dim street lamp. He leaned against the cold metal post and closed his eyes. He could still picture Emily's face from that day. Tears on her cheeks, fear in her eyes. He clenched his fists. "Please," he whispered to no one. "Please let her forgive me." He forced himself to keep walking. The streets grew quieter as he moved deeper into the neighborhood. Old houses lined the road. Most were dark, their windows glowing faintly with television screens or warm yellow lights. It felt like everyone here belonged. Everyone but him. Finally, he reached the address. A small, modest house with white shutters and a neatly kept yard. Daniel stood frozen at the edge of the walkway. The porch light was on. But the house felt impossibly distant. He stared at the front door. His heart pounded so hard it drowned out everything else. He tried to imagine what Emily looked like now. Would she have the same bright smile as in the photograph? Would she even open the door if she saw him standing there? Daniel took one step forward, then stopped. He felt the urge to turn around and disappear again. It would be easier than facing rejection. But something inside him pushed back. This was his only chance. He had already lost too much time. He climbed the 3 small steps to the porch. His hand hovered over the doorbell. He hesitated for a long moment, then pressed it. The chime echoed inside the house. Daniel's breath caught in his chest. There was movement behind the door. A shadow appeared through the curtain in the window. The doorknob turned. The door opened slowly. A young woman stood in the doorway. She was older now, no longer the little girl from the photograph. But Daniel recognized her instantly. Emily. She stared at him, her expression unreadable. Her long hair fell past her shoulders. Her eyes, those same bright eyes from years ago, narrowed slightly. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. Daniel's voice faltered. "It's me, Emily." "It's Dad." Emily froze. For a moment she didn't seem to breathe. Her hands tightened on the edge of the door. Then she stepped back slightly, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "You," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "You left." Daniel's chest ached. I know I did. And I'm so sorry." He took a small step closer. But Emily instinctively moved back. Her eyes glistened with tears. "You can't just show up after all these years," she said sharply. "You don't get to do that." "I don't deserve it," Daniel admitted quickly. "I know I don't. But I had to see you. I had to tell you how sorry I am." Emily shook her head, tears falling freely now. "You think sorry fixes 15 years. You think it erases birthdays, graduations, nights I cried myself to sleep because you weren't there." Daniel's heart felt like it was breaking all over again. "I know it doesn't. I know nothing I say can change the past. But I can't run anymore. I want to be in your life. Even if it's just as someone you call once a year." Emily stared at him for a long moment. Her lips trembled. She looked like she wanted to slam the door. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped aside just slightly. "You should come in," she said quietly. Her voice was tight, controlled. But she was letting him in. Daniel's breath shook as he stepped inside. The warmth of the house hit him immediately. It felt so different from the cold, lonely streets outside. Emily closed the door behind him but didn't look at him. She moved toward the kitchen, wiping her tears roughly. Daniel followed her slowly. The house was small but cozy. Photographs lined the walls. Emily at different ages, smiling with friends, graduating high school. There was no trace of him in any of them. Daniel's throat tightened as he looked at the pictures. He had missed everything. Every milestone. Every moment. And it was entirely his fault. Emily poured herself a glass of water. She didn't offer him one. She turned to face him finally, her arms crossed tightly. "So, what now?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't expect you to forgive me tonight. Or ever. I just wanted you to know I'm here." Emily stared at him for a long time. Her face softened just slightly. But her voice was still firm. "You hurt me more than anyone ever has." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know. And I'll carry that for the rest of my life." There was a silence that felt like it stretched forever. Then Emily whispered something Daniel hadn't expected. "You can stay in the guest room tonight." Daniel blinked. "Are you sure?" "I don't know why I'm saying yes," Emily admitted. "But I don't want to send you back out there either." Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Emily nodded stiffly and walked past him toward the hallway. "The guest room's at the end. You'll find blankets in the closet." Daniel stood frozen for a moment, his heart still racing. He knew this was only the first step, but it was more than he deserved. As he entered the small guest room, he sat on the edge of the bed. The quiet of the house was heavy. He could hear Emily moving around in her room. He wondered what she was thinking. If she hated him. If she was secretly relieved he was back. Daniel lay back slowly. The ceiling above him blurred through his tired eyes. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in 15 years, he was under the same roof as his daughter. And that was enough for now. But as Daniel closed his eyes, he couldn't shake the fear that Emily's kindness tonight might be temporary. Would she truly give him a chance? Or would one wrong word send him back into the cold forever? Daniel barely slept that night. He kept turning on the narrow bed. Every creak of the house made his heart race. He was under the same roof as Emily, but the distance between them felt as wide as it had ever been. He stared at the ceiling until the first faint light of dawn crept through the curtains. His body was exhausted, but his mind wouldn't stop. He kept replaying her voice in his head. The way she had said, "You left." It had cut deeper than anything else ever had. Daniel sat up slowly. He rubbed his face with both hands. He felt older than he was. Every regret weighed on him. But he knew he couldn't undo the past. He stood and looked around the small guest room. The walls were bare except for a single clock. It ticked softly, reminding him of all the time he had lost. He ran a hand over his face and whispered, "Please, let me find a way back into her life." The floor creaked outside the door. Daniel froze. He heard footsteps. Emily was awake. He stepped out carefully, unsure if she even wanted to see him. Emily was in the kitchen, her hair tied back messily. She was standing by the counter, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She looked up when he entered. Her eyes were tired, her face guarded. "Morning," Daniel said quietly. Emily just nodded. There was a long, awkward silence. "Do you want some coffee?" she asked finally. Her tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. "Yes. Thank you," Daniel said softly. She poured him a cup and set it on the table without looking at him. Daniel sat down slowly. He didn't know where to start. Emily leaned against the counter, arms folded tightly. She was waiting for him to speak. "I know it's strange for me to be here," Daniel began. "But I'm grateful you let me stay last night." Emily's expression didn't change. "I didn't do it for you," she said quietly. "I just didn't want to throw someone out into the cold." Daniel nodded. "I understand. And I'm not asking for your forgiveness." Emily tilted her head slightly. "Then why are you here?" Daniel hesitated. "I'm here because I want to be your father again. Even if it takes the rest of my life to earn that." Emily's jaw tightened. "You were my father. Once. Then you chose to leave. I thought staying away was better for you," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "I thought my presence would hurt you more than my absence." Emily shook her head slowly. "You were wrong." Her words hit him like a punch to the chest. He lowered his eyes to the coffee cup in front of him. He didn't know what else to say. The silence between them grew heavier. Daniel forced himself to look up. "Can I ask you something?" he said softly. Emily raised an eyebrow. "What? Did you ever think about me?" he asked carefully. Emily hesitated. She didn't want to answer. But finally she whispered, "Every day. And every time it hurt." Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. He wanted to reach for her hand but didn't dare. "I'm so sorry, Emily," he said quietly. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Emily turned away, unable to look at him. She set her coffee cup in the sink and gripped the counter with both hands. She was shaking. "You missed everything," she said through clenched teeth. "My first dance recital. My graduation. When I moved into this house. I had to do it all alone." Daniel stood slowly. He stepped closer but kept a careful distance. "I know. And I hate myself for it." Emily wiped at her tears angrily. "Stop saying that. It doesn't change anything." Daniel wanted to hold her, but he knew it was too soon. "I'm not leaving again," he said firmly. "Whether you want me here or not, I'll be close. Because I can't lose you twice." Emily turned to face him finally. Her eyes were red, but there was a flicker of something else there. Something he hadn't seen last night. It wasn't forgiveness. But it wasn't hatred either. She took a deep breath and stepped past him. "I have to go to work," she said quickly. Daniel nodded. "Of course. I'll be here when you get back." Emily hesitated at the door. She looked back at him for a second, as if she wanted to say something. But she didn't. She just left, the sound of the door closing echoing through the house. Daniel stood in the silence for a long time. He felt like he had been given a small window of hope, but he knew it could close at any moment. He spent the next few hours cleaning the house. It was the only thing he could think to do. He washed the dishes, swept the floor, even fixed a loose cabinet door. It didn't feel like enough. But he hoped Emily would notice. When she returned that evening, she looked surprised to find the house spotless. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. I wanted to. Emily sat down on the couch, exhausted. Daniel stood in the doorway, unsure if he should join her. But then she patted the empty spot next to her. Sit down, she said softly. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He sat slowly, careful not to seem too eager. Emily stared at the floor for a long time before speaking. Why did you leave, really? I want the truth. Daniel hesitated. He had been dreading this question. But he couldn't lie to her. Not now. I was in trouble, Emily, he admitted quietly. I was drinking too much. I was making terrible choices. And I was scared I'd ruin your life. Emily's eyes widened slightly. So you decided to ruin it by disappearing instead? Daniel lowered his head. I was a coward. I thought staying away would protect you. But it only hurt you more. Emily's voice shook. Do you know how many nights I waited by the phone, hoping you'd call? Do you know how much I hated myself, thinking I wasn't enough to make you stay? Daniel felt tears rolling down his face. I was the one who wasn't enough. Not you. You were everything. And I left because I didn't believe I could be the father you deserved. Emily looked at him for a long time. She wanted to stay angry. But the pain in his voice was real. She stood suddenly and walked toward the hallway. Daniel thought she was leaving. But instead, she returned a moment later holding a small box. She handed it to him silently. Daniel opened it with trembling hands. Inside were old photographs. Pictures of Emily as a child. Some with her friends, some alone. And one of the last photos they had taken together. Daniel stared at it, his breath catching. I kept this, Emily said softly. Even when I told everyone I hated you, I couldn't throw it away. Daniel looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. Emily, I don't deserve this. Emily didn't answer. She just walked back to her room and closed the door quietly. Daniel sat on the couch clutching the box of memories. He felt hope and heartbreak all at once. She hadn't forgiven him. Not yet. But she still cared enough to keep the past alive. And that meant everything. But Daniel couldn't help wondering. Would that small piece of hope be enough to rebuild what he had destroyed? Or would it all come crashing down again the moment he stumbled? The next morning came quietly. Daniel woke up before sunrise again. Sleep didn't come easy these days. He sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the clock as the minutes crawled by. Emily's door was still closed. He didn't want to disturb her. Instead, he busied himself making breakfast. It wasn't much. Just scrambled eggs and toast. But it felt like something a father should do. When Emily finally walked in, she looked surprised. The smell of breakfast filled the air. Daniel stood awkwardly by the stove. Morning, he said softly. Emily hesitated. Then nodded. Morning. Daniel placed a plate on the table. I made you something, he said carefully. Emily looked at the plate for a moment. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Daniel replied quietly. Emily sat down slowly. She took a small bite without saying a word. Daniel sat across from her. He didn't touch his food. He was too busy watching her. He was desperate for any sign that she might be softening. But Emily's face was unreadable. Halfway through the meal, Emily finally spoke. I told my friend you were here. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. And what did she say? Emily shrugged. She asked me why I even let you in. Daniel lowered his eyes. I understand why she'd ask that. Yeah, Emily said sharply. Because she knows how much you hurt me. Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. The guilt was crushing. Emily pushed her plate away. Daniel, she said quietly. He looked up, surprised she had used his name. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about all of this. But it's hard. I know, Daniel whispered. I'm not asking for forgiveness overnight. I just want a chance. Emily stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slightly. But if you want me to even consider letting you stay in my life, you have to be honest with me about everything. Daniel's stomach tightened. Everything. Everything, Emily said firmly. No half-truths. No secrets. If you want me to trust you again, I need to know who you really are. Daniel hesitated. There were things he had buried deep. Things he had never wanted her to know. But he could see in her eyes that this was the only way forward. Okay, he said finally. Ask me anything. Emily didn't hesitate. Where were you all these years? What were you doing? Daniel took a deep breath. I moved from place to place. I worked odd jobs. Construction, warehouses. Nothing stable. He paused. And for a long time I was drinking. Too much. Emily's expression hardened. You chose alcohol over me? Daniel shook his head desperately. No. I was drowning in guilt. And the bottle was the only way I knew how to escape it. Emily looked away, her jaw tightening. Did you ever think about coming back? Every day, Daniel said softly. But I was terrified. Terrified you'd hate me. Terrified you'd slam the door in my face. And for a long time I convinced myself you'd be better off without me. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I wasn't better off. I needed you. And you weren't there. Daniel's heart ached. He wanted to reach out, but he stayed still. I know, he whispered. And I will regret it for the rest of my life. Emily stood abruptly and walked to the window. She stared outside, her back to him. Do you even know who I am anymore? She asked quietly. Daniel hesitated. I want to. I want to learn everything I missed. Emily turned around, her eyes wet. Then you need to understand something. I'm not that little girl in your photo anymore. I built a life without you. I learned to depend on myself because I had no choice. Daniel nodded slowly. I respect that. And I'm proud of you for it. Emily's shoulders slumped. She didn't know what to say. She just felt drained. I need to go to work, she said finally. Daniel stood as she grabbed her bag. Can I walk you there? Emily shook her head. No. Not yet. She left quickly, leaving Daniel alone in the quiet house. He felt like he was losing her all over again. But he refused to give up. That evening, Emily came home later than usual. She looked tired, her shoulders heavy with the weight of the day. Daniel was waiting in the living room. He had spent the entire day fixing small things around the house again. But this time Emily noticed immediately. You fixed the leaky faucet? She asked quietly. Daniel nodded. And the door that was sticking? And the broken light in the hallway? Emily looked at him for a long time. You didn't have to. I wanted to do something for you, Daniel said softly. Even if it's small. Emily sighed and sank onto the couch. Daniel sat across from her, unsure if he should say more. But then Emily surprised him. Daniel, she said quietly. He looked up. Do you really want to be part of my life again? More than anything, he said instantly. Emily hesitated. Then you have to prove it. Not just with words, but with actions. Because I don't know if I can handle being hurt by you again. Daniel nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. Emily stared at him for a long moment. Then she asked a question he didn't expect. Do you have anywhere else to go? Daniel hesitated. No. He admitted. I came here with nothing but the clothes on my back and the hope you might let me stay. Emily looked down at her hands. You can stay here for now. But this doesn't mean everything is fine. I need time. Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. Thank you, he said softly. I won't let you down this time. Emily nodded slightly. But she didn't look convinced. She stood and walked toward her room. Daniel watched her go, his heart aching. He knew he had been given another chance. But he also knew one mistake could ruin everything. As he sat alone in the living room, he whispered to himself, I won't lose her again. But Daniel had no idea that a single unexpected knock at the door was about to test everything and change the fragile bond he was building with Emily forever. The knock at the door was sharp. It echoed through the quiet house like a warning. Daniel froze on the couch. Emily stepped out of her room, frowning slightly. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "No. I don't know who it could be." Emily walked slowly toward the door. Daniel stood behind her, his heart pounding. Something about the knock felt urgent. Emily opened the door cautiously. A man in a dark jacket stood on the porch. He looked rough, his eyes sharp. "Daniel Reed?" the man asked immediately. Daniel's stomach turned. "Yes," he said slowly. The man stepped forward. "You owe me money. And you're not going anywhere until I get it." Emily's eyes widened. "Who is this?" she demanded. Daniel swallowed hard. "Emily. Please. This isn't what it looks like." The man's voice rose. "It's exactly what it looks like. You disappeared and left me hanging with the debt you promised to pay." Emily stepped back in shock. "Debt? Daniel, what is he talking about?" Daniel's voice trembled. I made some bad choices before I came here. I borrowed money to survive, and I couldn't pay it back." Emily's expression hardened. "You lied to me again." Daniel shook his head desperately. "I didn't lie. I didn't want to drag you into this." The man stepped inside the doorway, his presence filling the small space. "You've got until the end of the week, Daniel," he said coldly. "Pay what you owe, or I'll make you regret it." Emily's voice cracked. "Get out." The man smirked. "You might want to know who your father really is before you throw me out." "Get out," Emily shouted, her voice shaking with anger. The man gave Daniel a final glare before stepping back outside. He disappeared into the night without another word. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily turned to Daniel slowly. Her eyes were filled with betrayal. "You promised me honesty," she whispered. "I was going to tell you," Daniel said quickly. "I just didn't want to lose you again." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this. I can't let you bring your problems into my life after everything you've already done." Daniel stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Emily, please. Don't shut me out. I know I messed up, but I'm trying. I'm not the man I used to be." Emily stepped back. "You don't get to decide that. You left me for 15 years, and now you're dragging danger to my door." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Give me a chance to fix this. I'll pay him back, I'll make it right. I'll protect you." Emily's voice trembled as she spoke. "I don't know if I can trust you." Daniel fell to his knees. Tears ran down his face as he looked up at her. "Please. Don't close the door on me. I'll do anything to prove to you that I'm not going to leave again." Emily stood frozen. Her mind raced with memories of being a little girl waiting at the door, of birthdays spent alone, of the pain that had defined so much of her life. But she also remembered the box of photographs, how she had never been able to throw them away, because deep down, a part of her had always wanted him back. Emily stepped closer. She crouched down in front of him, tears in her eyes. "You need to understand something, Daniel," she whispered. "If you break my heart again, it will destroy me." Daniel nodded quickly. "I won't. I swear I won't. I'll spend every day proving it to you." Emily hesitated for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Her grip was firm, trembling, but she didn't let go. "We'll figure this out together," she said softly. "But if you keep any more secrets from me, we're done." Daniel held her hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," he whispered. "I won't let you down this time." Emily stood and helped him to his feet. She looked at him carefully, her voice quieter now. "I want to believe you. I really do." Daniel wiped his tears. "You will," he said softly. I'll show you every single day until you do. They sat together on the couch in silence. The house felt heavier now, but there was something different too. Something fragile but real. Oh, Daniel knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He still had debts to pay. He still had to rebuild her trust brick by brick. But for the first time in 15 years, he wasn't running anymore. He looked at Emily, who was staring quietly at the floor. He wanted to tell her everything he felt, but instead he just whispered, "I love you, Emily." Emily's eyes filled with tears again. She didn't say it back, but she didn't pull away either. And in that moment, Daniel knew that was enough. But what about you? If someone from your past had hurt you so deeply and returned years later, would you give them a second chance? Or would you close the door to protect yourself from being hurt again? Tell us in the comments, because the answer might just change someone's life who's watching this right now. And if this story moved you, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that truly matter.